Hello everyone. I was asked to do another video and talk about what led up to me doing drugs, what led up to me leaving home, and Mark's death. I was 12 years old and I was struggling in school. So I started doing drugs to help me study for exams. And I found that the exams were a bit hard, but with the drugs that I was doing, I was able to get the answers correct to where I passed. One day, I came home and I was sitting down on the floor studying. My grandfather walked in. He was ticked off at the world like usual, and he kicked me in the middle of my back. I looked at him and I said, "That is the worst mistake you could have ever made, because I don't care if you live or die. You do it again, you will be dead." Well, my grandmother said I was wrong for saying that. Okay, I understand that. I sat there and I had told others that as soon as school was over, I was moving in with Mark. Well, I lived with my grandparents basically until I was 15. And again, when I was 15, my grandfather kicked me in the back, and I told him, "Worst mistake, old man, I am out of here." So I finished school that year. Even though I was still doing drugs, I finished school and I moved to New Orleans with Mark. Mark at the time was 18, and he ended up getting a job in a bar as a bartender, and I was working in a bookstore while going to school because I promised Mark and my grandmother I would finish school. While working in the bookstore, bills were piling up. I was starting to use crystal methamphetamine even more than what I had. And I had looked at Mark and said, "I'm going to talk to Tex about getting a job in the bar for anything he needs." Well, Tex said that I could work in the bar and I could clean up. So I did that, and it was nice because I was able to spend more time with Mark. Things were wonderful. Mark and I hardly ever argued, and the times that we were together, it was like you could not even tell we were lovers because we never fought. We never called each other honey, babe, sweetheart, all those cute little nicknames. If I ever got a little irritated with him, he would know because I would say Marcus Nathaniel, and when the middle name comes in, you know there's something wrong. He had looked at me and said, "We just can't make it on our income." And I told him, "Well, I'll try to get another job." So I went to the restaurant down the street from where we were living, and I had applied. Well, my schedule was, when I wasn't in school, it was the bookstore, the bar, the restaurant. So during the summer, I was working at the bookstore from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 p.m. I would go to the bar, work at the bar from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. From 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. I was working in the restaurant, which was fine because all of the places were just around the corner from each other, so it wasn't that much of a walk. While I was working, I was doing the drugs even more. Mark looked at me and he said, "Honey, we need more drugs. We can't keep doing this schedule unless we're totally blasted." So I made sure we had the drugs. And he had started doing it with me because I didn't want to do it alone anymore. When I turned 16, Mark had gotten me a dog and a cat. The cat was a Garfield type cat, and this cat had expensive taste. You couldn't get a can of Friskies and a bag of 9 Lives for the cat to eat. The cat had to have the expensive food, and it had to be mixed with moist cat food and served in I call it a goblet type dish. And the dog, he was the type that would try to lunge at people, so I named him Pinga. The cat's name was Mijaja Gabor. I took time off from working at the restaurant to work with Pinga. I finally got Pinga to where people could come up to him and pet him if we were out on the street. And it was really good that he finally settled down, because I got tired of him lunging, and the only time he would really lunge is if someone was coming up to try to hurt me. He wanted to make sure that never happened. Well, when I turned 18, that was a wonderful year. Well, before I turned 18, let's go to New Year's Eve when I was 17. Mark, his mom, his grandma, and his sister were all at the house, and we were celebrating. And Mark's grandma was sitting over by Pinga's water dish. And I looked at the dog and I went, "Pinga, Dad needs something to drink." The dog would go to the fridge, open it, and pull out a bottle of beer or a soda, whatever I wanted. And what was funny is Mark's grandma was sitting there drinking, I think it was vodka at the time. Well, she started pouring some in Pinga's water dish. I didn't catch it. And Pinga kept running outside because where we lived, we had a patio, and we left the door open. And he kept running out there, and I guess he was getting sick. I wasn't quite sure. He came in, and Grandma looked at him and said, "Hey, buddy." She could never remember his name when she was blasted. She goes, I'm out of drink. Give me drink." And I looked at Grandma and I said, "You've had about enough." And she goes, "No, I need more." So Pinga went and got her another fifth. And he brought it to her, and she sat there, and things were fine. Well, Mark and I, we were the type, we liked to play games on Grandma. He had a snake, and Grandma sat there and she goes, I'm cold. So Mark gets up and gets his snake out and wraps it around Grandma's shoulders. The snake was laying there just perfectly still. We were watching a horror movie at the time, and when the killer showed up, the snake popped up in Grandma's face and she flipped. That snake went flying, Mark caught it, and made sure it was safe. We sat there and we laughed. And she was just cursing us out. But it was funny, we laughed. And after the movie was over, she sat there and she told Mark and I that she wanted to watch Gone with the Wind. And Mark said he thought it was in the VCR. So she turns the VCR on and starts playing the movie, and it was a porno. And she goes, I don't remember Rhett and Ashley doing this in the movie. And Mark said, Grandma, it's the director's cut. This is stuff that you didn't see in the movie. That woman actually sat there all through that porno watching it going, oh wow, how can they do stuff like that? That's gotta hurt. Oh, that's a weird position. I mean, she was editing most of it. And we were sitting there just dying laughing because it was funny. And I had looked at Mark's mom, his sister, and Grandma, and I said, well, Mark and I are going to go to bed. We've celebrated New Year's. It's after midnight. We did our toasts and everything. And I told Mark's grandma that the chair she was sitting in actually folds back into a bed. And I told Mark's mom that she can pull out the bed and lay on the bed. Her and Mark's sister. So they did that, and Mark and I went into the bedroom and we went to bed. I'm not going to say what we did. I'm pretty sure you all know. The next morning, I was the first to wake up. And I got up, took my shower, and I started making everyone breakfast. After I had prepared breakfast, I went out on the patio and hosed it down, and that's when I noticed that Pinga was getting sick and vomiting. So I hosed down the patio so that no one knew that he was getting sick, and he had messed out there, so I had to hose that out. Well, I started to notice that when Mark got up after he ate, he would go to work, and then after work he would vanish. Normally he would stop in to the restaurant and then come to the bookstore the next morning to see how I was doing. I was working in the restaurant one night, and I'm 18 at the time, Mark is 20, and Mark came in and ordered breakfast, and he was going to pay, and I said, no, I'll just put it on my account. So that was fine, we never argued. He looked at me and he said, for Valentine's Day, I've scheduled you to be off at the bookstore and at the bar because I have something planned. And I said, what's that? He got down on his knee and asked if I would be his husband, basically. So Valentine's Day rolled around and we had a commitment ceremony. Mind you, at the time, we were doing drugs quite heavily. And I told him that I didn't think this was a good idea, so we didn't do the commitment. Or we did the commitment ceremony. And he told me, he said, I promise you that I will stop doing drugs. I will never hit you in anger, and I will always love you and want to be with you only. That was fine. I looked at him, and mine was, I promise to love him and only him. I will always be faithful to him, no matter what. And I would never hit him in anger. I did not promise I would not do drugs, because I didn't think I could do that. Well, we spent the evening together because the restaurant gave me the night off due to our commitment ceremony. And the next day I got up and went to work, and Mark came down and looked at me and he said, how's things going? I said, well, I just opened, and so far we've got 9 customers in the store. And he goes, that ain't bad. So 5 o'clock rolled around and I looked at my boss and I said, Bob, I'm gone. I have to go to the bar now. And he goes, okay, that's fine. So I left and went over to the bar. Mark looked at me and he said, hey. And I went, hi, Mark. And I walked up to him and we gave each other a kiss. And he looked at me and he goes, you're looking tired. I said, yeah, I am a little. It was boring at the store. Maybe things will pick up here. Yeah, things picked up quite a bit. I was cleaning the bathroom left and right because one guy would come in and just go right to the bathroom and get sick. It was around Mardi Gras at that time that I was secretly doing crystal meth behind Mark's back, so he didn't know. And I did not know at the time that Mark was now slamming. Slamming is where you take a needle and inject the drugs intravenously. I finally got my checks and took them to the bank, cashed them, and I noticed I had enough to pay the bills, which Mark really enjoyed because we were no longer in debt. And he told me I could quit one of my jobs. And I told him, no, I think I'll hold on to him. So it was April 4th of 1990. I was 20 years old. Mark was 23. No, I was going to turn 20. I was working in the restaurant when one of our friends came over to me and said, we got a problem. Mark's over by the bar Mississippi River bottom, face down in the street. And I went, what? And that's when one of the employees said, just go check it out. So I went to check it out. And I told my friend, I said, go and call 911. And I'm sitting on the curb holding Mark and telling him, don't leave me. Whatever you do, do not leave me. Fight this. And it wasn't until we got to the hospital that I was told Mark had overdosed. He had done what's known as a trash can. That's where you mix a bunch of different drugs together and slam it. And I had vowed to him that day that I would stop doing drugs. It really didn't hit me until I finally got tired of it, because I was doing drugs and staying awake. I could do a 8-ball and stay awake for a month. And I knew I had a problem. Well, the whole time trying to work and take care of Mark, because they said his organs were slowly shutting down. And I told him he was still in the hospital and I was still doing drugs. And I told him, I said, you know what, rather than him die in the hospital, I'd rather have him die at home. So they allowed me to have him at home, and we had a nurse come in. And I had went to bed on the 12th of August after kissing him on his cheek and telling him good night and that I loved him. I went to sleep and woke up the next morning to take my shower and get ready for work. And as I was making him his breakfast, I was making a few phone calls, and then I finished the calls, went in to wake him up and tell him his breakfast was ready. He didn't wake up. I called his mom and I said, Mom, something's wrong. Mark's not waking up. And she said, honey, I will be right over. Call 911. So I called and told them that something was wrong with my lover. He's not waking up. Well, at the time I didn't say lover, I said husband. I said he's not waking up. And they sent a police officer over, and the police had the paramedics show up. And as they're in there, they were asking me questions as to what I did, how did I kill him. And I'm sitting there in tears, telling the officer I went in to wake him up and he didn't wake up. And they said a healthy young man like him just doesn't die in his sleep. They were trying to blame me for his death. And I sat there doing the best I could. Mark's mom came in, and the officer asked who she was. I said, this is his mother. And I was just broke down. It hurt. I was asked again by the officer, how did I kill him? And I said, I didn't kill him. He was a drug user. He was doing intravenous drugs. His organs were shutting down. And the paramedics contacted the coroner. The coroner came in, and he went back and was checking Mark out, and I was doing the best to answer the questions. Again, the officer kept alliterating, what did I kill him with? The coroner came out, looked at me and looked at Mark's mom and said, he died of complications because the paramedics already had mentioned what the health record showed. And he said that they would have to do an autopsy, but the best he could figure is he died at 2:45 in the morning. Same time I was born. As the paramedics were taking Mark out in the body bag on the gurney, I kept fighting with him, saying, no, you can't take him, he's mine. We've been together for years. I don't want him to go. He can't go. And Mark's mom held me and said, honey, he's gone. He's with God now. You can't do anything. I tried my best to hold it together. They told me that his heart had ruptured. I sat there at his funeral listening to a minister who didn't know him talk about how great of a person he was. And they asked at the funeral if anyone had anything to say about him. And I got up and I said, Mark was the type of person who would give you the shirt off his back. He never argued with me. We never fought. The only time we ever had a serious discussion was over drugs, when I asked him to quit. I did not know that after our commitment ceremony, he was doing drugs. It was Mark's mom who finally told me I needed to stop, and I did. I had a relapse in, I think it was September, which everyone has relapses. They said it didn't affect my sobriety date because when I relapsed, I ended up going into what they call a drug-induced craze. I know that craze was to try to kill myself so I could be with Mark. I sat there and looked at Mark's mom and I said, "Mama, I need help." And she goes, "I know." So she ended up having me come to her house, and I was basically locked in a room to where there was no way I could get out. They had bars on the windows due to New Orleans having burglary problems. And they kept me in there until I detoxed. My detox was so severe that I was going crazy, climbing the walls. It was something that, if you ever see movies of people detoxing, having the itches, that's what it's like. It's really, really bad. I don't wish it on anyone. I was up for 2 months at that time, and I couldn't take it. I was locked in that room for, I want to say, 2 to 3 months. I was only allowed out to go to the bathroom, and someone would come in to bring me food and drinks, which was fine. I needed it. I needed to detox. When I finally detoxed, that's when I came to the realization that Mark was gone. It was 1992 when I moved back up to Boston, and I didn't go back to friends and family there. I lived on the streets. I figured it was time for me to suffer and pay the consequences, so I did. Through my suffering, I noticed that I needed to be around people. So I went and I lived with friends and family there. And while living there, I went to college for a little while. I wanted to be a child psychologist, and I started to do, I guess you could call it, therapy, volunteer work with the homeless. I would go to the mission, and if they needed someone to talk to, I was there to be an ear to listen. Things were going real well. I had a car at the time. I was able to get around and do things. Well, the whole time I was just enjoying life. I was staying to the commitment that I made to Mark. I would be faithful to him no matter what. Sure, I had other guys that wanted to date me, but I kept telling them, no, we can be friends. I wasn't looking for a relationship. And when they asked why I didn't want a relationship, I told them I was being faithful to my deceased. And people told me that I needed to let that go and find happiness again. I wasn't ready to. Well, one of my friends, Ben, in 1997 decided he was going to throw me a birthday party. And I was told where it was, so I was driving to my birthday party. As I got on the freeway to head to the location, I was hit in the left front quarter panel by a drunk driver, going 95 miles per hour in a 65 mile per hour zone. It totaled the car, and when the police and paramedics showed up, they had listed me DOA. I ended up going to Massachusetts General Hospital, and it was in the hospital that they had friends that came in and were concerned about me. One of my friends was the police chief in the Government Square area. He stayed right by my bedside in the emergency room. It was a lot of them trying to figure out how bad I was going to be, how long I would be in a coma, and they finally brought me back in the emergency room. They said my right hip was totally messed up. I was also told that I suffered from head trauma, and I kept asking if I'd be able to walk again, because they told me the way my hip looked, I would not walk again. As I was in the hospital, I slipped into a coma due to the head trauma. And my friend Ben, his mom, and the police chief's wife was up there visiting. And the police chief's wife finally said, "You are going to open your eyes. If you don't, I will never talk to you again. You are not giving up. You are needed here." She kept saying that, and Ben would hold my hand and say, "Look, I don't want to lose you. I need you. You're the only one that puts me in my place. I need you. Come back." I finally came out of a coma, and I was told by the doctors that they wanted to try physical therapy. They had done so many different physical therapies that I finally looked at them and I said, "Look, rather than you putting me through hell, let me work on my body myself. Let me do it at my pace rather than your pace." And the doctor told me, "You can't leave the hospital until I'm sure you're going to be okay." I was in the hospital from 97. I came out of a coma in December. They kept me in the hospital. I slipped back into a coma in late 98. Came back out of it in 99. And from 99 to 2001, they were working on my body. I finally got to where I'm able to walk, but I have to walk with a cane. I was also told that I could never drive again. It was while I was in a coma, they noticed that I was starting to have seizures. Well, at the time, I just thought they were blackouts, so I didn't worry about it. And they weren't severe enough at the time to where I had to worry about it. I started chatting with a friend online because a friend of mine brought their computer up, their laptop up, and you had to have this special card to get on the internet. So I started chatting with a guy on Yahoo, and he asked me to move to Oregon. I moved to Oregon, and he didn't turn out to be the person I thought he was. I ended up renting a room, and I kept having these weird blackouts, didn't know what they were. In 2004, I met another guy, and I thought he was the one. He could make me forget about Mark and everything. Didn't turn out that way. Well, he kept noticing I was having these weird blackouts and my body was shaking, and I would collapse to the ground. He called the paramedics, and that's when they said, no, you got seizures. So they put me on medication for seizures. Ever since 2004, I've been suffering from seizures. I had a commitment ceremony with this guy in February 14th or 15th of 2004. And I actually regret having that commitment ceremony because friends that I have here in Oregon, he was treating like crap. And I figured they didn't need it, I didn't need it. So I had moved out and moved in with my friend Linda, who I call Mom, and her granddaughters called me Uncle Zane. In 2006, I moved where I'm at, and I started chatting with this guy down in California. Things were perfect with us. Went down there for a while, stayed with him, and I came back, and we're going to fast forward to where we're at now. In 2013, I started connecting with family that I forgot I had or didn't know I had. And it was really weird because I was told by Mary Catherine, who is a cousin, but she's more than a cousin, she's like my sister. I was told by her that I have nephews, or a nephew and nieces, and her son had told me that I was his daughter's grandpa. In January of this year, or February, I had called and talked to Mary Catherine, and I heard Holly Jean say Grandpa for the first time, except she said Gampa. That touched my heart. Even though things with Mark were not the best, I can't say that he was totally at fault with the drugs. It was my fault. I introduced him to it, but I didn't twist his arm to do it. And I'm noticing now that doing these videos, it's helping me to clear my conscience to where I know I didn't cause his death. I didn't kill him. The drugs killed him. I hate seeing people do drugs. I wish drugs never existed. I am just glad I can do these videos to give people insight into my life and what I'm like. On Facebook, I would cover up a lot of this. Well, for now on, I'm not covering up anything. I will continue to do these videos to show people who I am and what I'm about. Even if I have to do a video every day, I'm happy to do it, because this way people can get to know me. If there is anything you would like to know about me, please put it in the comment section down below. I will read everyone's comments, and I will try to do a video about what they want. Also, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, please check out the videos over on the side here. There's a lot of discussions. Yes, some of them do get emotional, but it's better to let my emotions show, because it proves I'm human. I don't do these to act like I'm a robot. I don't even go by writing down a script. Most people use a script and memorize that to do a video. I don't have to. What I have to do is get things off my chest and become a better person. I do want to give a shout out to Liam, Lewis, Harry, Greg, Mal, Zane, and a few other people. And with the shout out, I want them to know how much I care. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I hope to see your comments and find out what you would like to see next. So please leave a comment down below. When I do more videos, I will decide when I want to add my Facebook and Twitter account to the information. But right now, please watch the other videos and leave comments down below. Thank you. Have a good day.